Hey everyone, it is Aramy with Spirited Awake. I am here by my favorite tree. I'm still wondering how people with really good YouTube videos get the lighting right in their videos because I keep playing with it. And we're still in like the semi-dark. But here we are. I wanted to make a video tonight. I just got off not too long ago from a shift at work. And I know that the newly awakened people all want to say that I should not be enjoying my restaurant job, but I really do. Uh, just thinking today about how grateful I am that I'm in a place where people treat me well. I'm in a place where I like the people. Um, I enjoy the people who are in charge. And I'm excited, every day. It's not that old feeling of like, oh God, I've got to get up and go to work. It's like, oh, it's going to happen today. And some of that is my mindset, and some of that is this is a good place for me right now. So, building on our themes here, if you're doing something in your life, in any facet of your life, and you just really enjoy it, it doesn't matter what people say or think. If somebody needs to cast their doubt on your glory, I mean, if somebody needs to tell you why you should be unhappy doing what you're doing, provided, you're not hurting anybody or, it's not very clearly wrong. What does that say? What does that say about somebody that you're around that they wouldn't just be happy for you? I have to think about these things because I've been wanting to make a video for a little while about and see, I always come up with these titles after I've made the video because I get how it works for me. I get this call to make a video, like, oh, it's right, Spirit wants to come through now. I'm not going to pretend like every single second of these are just me channeling, my highest everything, because sometimes I just want to talk to you guys and imagine when I'm reaching you and what you have to say. I'm always curious about who's watching. The video is about critical thinking, okay? And we all know what critical thinking is, but there's something that I've noticed in the metaphysical community, and I keep putting myself out there. I have been a solitary practitioner for a very, very long time. When I left home, age 17, moved to a different state, got a job, moved into a house, my first experience is living on my own. I found some people who were also into Wicca, which at the time, this was the late 90s, and we didn't have the internet like we have now. We didn't have a lot of resources, so we had the metaphysical section of the bookstore. That's where I ended up. And so I found all these books on Wicca, and so I called myself a Wiccan for a while because I just didn't know what else was out there. I also found books on Celtic shamanism, and those called me right away. And this is like an ancillary topic, but you'll see why it's related. I recently had to recall, or I did recall, the story of me very excited as a teenager going to some people that I highly respected who were Wiccan, actually. they were, at least they were a pagan. They may not have identified as Wiccan. It's been a while. Anyway, I went to them. I was very excited about discovering that the druids were calling to me, that shamanism was calling to me, and that I just discovered that it existed. Really what it was is I remembered for this lifetime that it existed. And I remember they just shook their heads and said no. The gist of what they said was anybody who runs around calling themselves a shaman or druid, they just have problems. They have too many problems for like you or me to ever deal with. Like, do not listen to those people. And I was so embarrassed. Just, oh, yeah. I don't know why those people reacted the way they did. I know it wasn't, the intent was not to hurt me. I don't know, they just had the wrong idea. Like, even though they were in the metaphysical community, and even though they knew about magic and, called themselves pagans, and practiced. And were very, very smart, fun, exciting, interesting people. They just somehow hadn't gotten the message that shamans are real. Shamans are not only found in one area of the world or one specific time period. They had not gotten that information. So me not knowing any better at the time, I wish I could tell you that I just let that go and followed my heart, but I didn't. I decided I must have been really silly, and I got wrapped up, and that was the start of my big, decades-long snowball of I'm making it up, I'm just imagining, I just wish that this was true, and all this throwing myself under the bus. All the self-abuse that I did to myself because I really, I placed the value on what other people said and thought over what I knew to be true, because I wasn't sure what would happen if I stood in my own truth and my own power. So I know what that's like. This is why I make these videos. It's hard. Here's how it ties in. It's hard to put yourself out there. It's been hard to dig this stuff up because I still remember the feeling I had of just wanting to hide and how could I be so, just the self-hate that showed up in that moment. It's really hard to put yourself out there. I'm in an interesting part in my own personal life. None of it is separated from spirituality, but some of the topics are not things that I'm making videos on here. I'm very into horses. I've been riding all my life. I spent this past year during COVID traveling up and down the East Coast and working for some high-level trainers and people that I couldn't otherwise have had a way to study with. And I lived on their farms and I took care of their horses and studied and trained with them every day. And it doesn't get any easier to keep putting yourself out there, because here in my hometown I still am friends with people I grew up riding with, and we have successful careers and we've blossomed into these full versions of ourselves with room to keep growing. They know me, I know them, we know each other's background, and there's a long-term accountability. But when you go and just show up in somebody's barn, you're well, here I am, and they don't necessarily have any idea that you have the basics covered. It's that way whenever you put yourself out there again. Part of it is learning to present yourself as you authentically are. I used to really downplay who I was. I still do it sometimes because I want to make other people comfortable. I don't want to come on too strong. Sometimes I don't necessarily want to get into certain topics. I don't want everyone to know about my spirituality, or where I'm at. I just, people sometimes feel obligated to think that you're very, very deep, and I am deep, but very serious all like, well, that's a shaman, I can't joke with them. And that's not true. So I went through a recent period of putting myself out there in the metaphysical community. After, I've done this for so long, when I moved out and found the other Wiccans, and tried to like form a coven and do all this stuff. And I don't identify as Wiccan now, but it was a very powerful time for me to find other people who knew anything, what I was talking about. And what I found then was a lot of people I was hanging out with, I liked them. Most of them. I like them. I like most people. But I found that when we really got down to the nitty-gritty, they were just saying what they'd read in a book. They didn't have actual experience. And I haven't thought about this stuff for a long time. But I realized that we couldn't really work together, because once we got like off the book page and stuff was going on that wasn't, necessarily mentioned in chapter 7 or whatever it was, they just kind of went blank, and they didn't know. They had never really practiced on their own. So I got very discouraged, and I went back to being a solitary practitioner. And so it has been for, 20 years after that. I obviously, when I was a shamanic apprentice, I did work with my teacher. She had a couple other students that I worked with, but mostly it was pretty solitary, like me doing the work and having sessions with her, which was fine. I really needed the space at that time. And so I don't know why recently I did like kind of join up with other people from the metaphysical community, and especially the ET community. And that was nice. It's fun to be around people, just like being around other horse people. Like, they may not know you, they may not know your history and your story and like what you're capable of right off the bat, like and your talents, what you're known for, and all that good stuff. But there's stuff that you can just immediately jump into a horse person conversation and not have to explain, like stuff that you'd have to explain to other people. And metaphysics is largely the same. One thing I started to notice is there were still the same kinds of people who had a lot to say and a lot of opinions, but they didn't have a lot of practice. There were people calling themselves shamans. And if you talk to them in private messages, like away from the group, they didn't know what dimensions were. And this is not being shared to put anybody down. This is not being shared so that we can be like, oh, those people call themselves this, like with that kind of attitude. We're more saying that this is out there. And the reason I would even bring this up and talk about it is because I'm making these videos. I just feel, and this may evolve, but right now, these videos are being made for people who are starting their journey, and they don't necessarily know how to like interpret all the stuff that's out there. And it's better to hear it from somebody who's been there, who has like no personal stake in, it doesn't matter to me like what you do, where you go, how your journey progresses. But I am kind of a person, I don't know you personally. I'm not talking personally to you right now. I'm making a video that you're going to see at the opportune time to see it, right? So it's good to hear these things so we can like have our eyes open and our mind alert. But I did run into people calling themselves shamans. Had never been interdimensional, didn't really know what that was. They were taking the term shaman because it sounded so cool to them. They didn't know what the title meant. They didn't know what... This is a lifestyle. This is a way of interpreting the world, and you can learn shamanic practices. A lot of people are shamanic practitioners. They have studied ways and techniques that shamans do use, and that's like totally legit. And usually these people will tell you, like, I'm not a shaman. I practice some of the techniques that a shaman does, but they won't call themselves a shaman. Anybody can use these techniques. This is not like, oh, these people have access to spirit and you don't. It's not that at all. Everybody has access to spirit. Shamans just in this lifetime, for whatever reason, whatever has led to our development now, we just maintain those relationships. We kind of came into this or had some big cataclysmic event where we ended up seeing the world and interpreting the world in this very unique way it would appear. I don't find it unique. I find it very normal. And I'm not convinced that other people are so very different. If you ask me, I'm working with a couple friends now who were like, I think I have a touch of the shaman. And like, you might be. And that is very, very different from just saying, the word shaman sounds so romantic. I'm going to call myself a shaman. It's misleading. And I don't say that people are trying to be like deliberately evil or, they don't know. They don't know. We've all made mistakes where we used words wrong. We took titles. We wanted to be mysterious. We wanted to be exciting. We wanted to be just, I can think of so many times in my life growing up where I wanted to be a certain way. Instead of being myself, I wasn't at the point at some times in my life where I could cultivate who I was. So I tried to make myself into like this title or this thing or like this person that I really admired. There's no like, let us not be hypocrites about this, but let us also be aware. Look beyond the labels people are giving themselves. Look to what they're doing. And somebody can be a shaman and be legit, and like maybe you are too, and you just don't like them. I think it was Ram Dass who has great stories about when he went to a monastery at one point and he was so excited to be around the monks. He was like, I'm around monks, and kind of like geeking out about it. And just, he knew that this was going to be it. Like he was so sick of people, and he had found his people because he was living with monks now. And it didn't take very long before he realized that some of the monks really got on his nerves, and some of them sweat really loud, and they chewed their food in a really annoying way. And he was like, I can't believe I'm being annoyed by monks. But there it was. So it was a great, if you can ever find that story or it comes up or something in his, the plethora of writings that he does have. Just pay attention to that one because it is such a good, joke on himself, or just here's the revealing of where we need to do the spiritual work, right? So he also likes to say, and I like this a lot too, you don't have to dislike someone. He didn't have to dislike those monks. He just didn't have any business with them. And sometimes it's like, hey, I don't wish you ill. I don't wish you anything. I just have no business with you. We have no business. Maybe we will someday. Maybe we won't. But I like that a whole lot better than, I don't like that person, or, saying something mean. That doesn't come naturally, and I don't choose to participate in that. But, we're not saints, we're not angels, but we are aspects of angels. So, the big takeaway from all of this, and here I thought this would be a short video, but I hope you've enjoyed it up to this point. When I put myself out there most recently, the biggest thing I saw that was an actual impediment to, and not just a disagreement or a difference in opinion, was that when information would be presented, if the information was too challenging or just no, I think if the information was too challenging, I really think that's it. It's very simple. People were very quick to jump on the style of delivery rather than look at the content of what was being presented. And of course, like, there are different styles of delivery, you know. Some people are very direct, some people just have just a very certain style that they present everything in. But we need to look at the content of what is being put out there and not the personality, you know, if you will, behind it. Principles before personalities. And I saw a lot of that in a certain community, but I see it all the time. It stood out so much because I was like, well, you know, we've really, if we're going to get ahead and we're going to get into like the nuts and bolts of the stuff that we want to get into, we're going to have to start listening to information and not deciding whether we like that person personally and they put everything in a very pleasing manner and a perfect, you know, way, exactly how we would have said it is really what we're saying. Did they put it the way that we would have said it? Yes or no? Now, obviously, you know, if somebody is just being straight up unpleasant, we're probably not going to listen to them. But there's a huge amount of personal leeway in how things are delivered. So be on the lookout. It's a sign of a group that isn't healthy if that's kind of the group vibe. Also, there were times in my most recent foray into like meeting just a huge, and we're talking like hundreds of people, right? Just like a huge melting pot of folk. There was a lot of critical thinking that didn't get hammered out. An idea would be presented and someone would say, oh, I love this idea. And someone would say, I'm not sure about this idea. It doesn't quite sit with me very well. And rather than go, okay, because everybody's allowed their own journey, right? What tended to happen very quickly was, oh, well, we shouldn't criticize. And it would be like, oh, well, I wasn't, some form of like, oh, I wasn't criticizing. I was saying that it didn't work for me. Oh, well, we shouldn't say anything negative. There should be no negativity because we need to be positive. So that's called toxic positivity. And, you know, I've talked about that in other videos, but it bears repeating because being positive doesn't mean just saying yes to everything. You're not just a yes person to the world. That's out of balance. It's toxic positivity because there's too much of it. You can't stare at the sun all day. You can't have the sun never go down, right? You can't never have the darkness. Like, you've got to sleep at some point. There has to be a balance. And we know this. And the reason toxic positivity persists is because people don't want to be uncomfortable. The reason they don't want to be uncomfortable is because they're still living in fear. They can't handle going, oh, or just being challenged without feeling like a very deep fear. And it's too scary. So letting go of fear, tapping into your intuition and letting go of fear go hand in hand. And they are the basis and the start of every single metaphysical person's journey. And they're the way that you grow. Because then you can entertain any idea. It doesn't have to throw you off. It's just information. Take it, leave it, use it, put it in your storage for later. We've got to have critical thinking around the metaphysical field. We've got to have creativity in our, what did I just say? We've got to have creativity. We do need creativity. We've got to have critical thinking within our creativity. I mean, it only helps it, you know? Critical thinking is not criticizing. It's not negative. So be on the lookout. Try to surround yourself with people who can handle some critical thinking. There's a big difference between picking apart an idea and picking apart a person. So let's remember everyone's deserving of some respect, and if we don't respect them, we can choose to walk away. Nobody is important enough. The world's going to fall apart, or your journey's going to suffer because they're not around. Your journey does not hinge on any one person except for yourself.